Start with you. Your thoughts on the verdict today from the jury?
Well, we felt we had a very compelling case for a number of reasons, as were elucidated in our argument. However, our system is such, the jury makes the decision, their decision is what counts. This is early days, so what happens next is undecided. Inevitably, there's a parole eligibility hearing process, which will be undertaken, and we feel good about that too, so that's down the road.
What's the reaction from Mr. Phillips on the verdict?
Well, obviously, Mr. Phillips is disappointed. We've been, spending a long period of time getting ready for this, and we certainly had a degree of optimism with respect to certain issues regarding the evidence. But as Mr. Gruchy has indicated, juries are notoriously unpredictable, and to be candid, to say that I'm not disappointed certainly would be a mischaracterization of how I'm feeling right now.
There must be some sense of relief that he didn't go down for first-degree murder, though, is there?
Well, I think that's a fair comment. Obviously, going into these things, that being an option that's on the table, clearly that was a factor that always weighed very heavily on us. But the reality in terms of the evidentiary issues as they unfolded, quite frankly, we're not surprised by that aspect of it, but it is a relief. But again, as I say, I can't understate my overall disappointment with the outcome here today.
Can you discuss how much time he can spend in jail? Can you discuss some of the parameters around that?
Well, a finding of guilt on murder, be it first or second degree, results in a life sentence, which persists through life. The issue is parole eligibility. So when you talk about first degree murder, that has a 25-year minimum before parole is possible. When you talk about second degree murder, the floor is 10 years. So you go from 10, and then there will have to be a decision made by the judge, as indicated in court, as to where it falls between 10 and 25. At this point, we're not there yet, but I feel very good. We have an excellent argument for a lower parole eligibility period.
How about the fact that he doesn't have any prior record, any criminal record? Will that help your case for that?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. And with regard to issues of release and overall parole eligibility, the reality is that we feel fairly confident based on certain information that we received when you left that we have a very good argument in that regard. But on the issue of appeal, which I think is very relevant at this point, obviously we have to discuss that with him. There perhaps are things that we need to review, Mark and I, and with Brandon before that decision is made. I don't anticipate it's going to be made very quickly. I think we're probably going to take, a week or so to contemplate and reflect.
So what happens next?
I spoke to him in court. We're just about to go down to see him now, and I was speaking to him before the decision and after.
Yes. So
I'll be speaking with him again in a few minutes.
How was his
reaction?
Well, how would you be?
Exactly.
That's a pretty simple answer, I think.
It's a devastating day for him and his family, and obviously for Mr. Wellman's family. And our thoughts and prayers go out to them as well. Let's not think, in any way that this is a happy occasion for anybody involved, including the Wellman family.
For someone who has never been in jail prior to this, can you explain what the process has been like for him? For Philip?
The process for anybody going through what we refer to as a correction system in this province is atrocious. It's just horrible. And I think that that's become common sense at this point. It's the reality of it. Our system is such that people, everyday people like you, me, anybody else can get charged with a crime, and they can spend time in jail waiting or afterwards. And the state of affairs in the province isn't very good in that regard right now.
Were there any surprises for you throughout the trial?
Oh yes, there's always surprises. Decisions get made by various parties and people about how to go about certain things. You can never predict everything perfectly, and a part of, I guess, running a murder trial is responding to those twists and turns in the road as they unfold. It's the most complicated thing you can do, I would say, as a lawyer. So.
In your closing, you mentioned manslaughter, and it seemed that you were hoping that that's where the jury would lean. Obviously, it would be a not guilty verdict was ultimately what you would want. Do you have any regrets in the way you handled the file and didn't call evidence, didn't call Brandon Phillips to the trial or others?
Absolutely none.
Absolutely none. That was a complicated issue. Decisions were being made based on the evidence as it unfolded and our interpretation of what was being heard, and of course, naturally, our hope that our jury was hearing the same thing. That decision on evidence we labored over it, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, we, Mark and I, as well as Brandon,
Yes.
we were all in agreement with that decision, and certainly no regrets.
So what is the next move now for you guys and for Brandon Phillips?
Well, the next move is to adjust, look at the parole eligibility issues while simultaneously considering questions of appeal, as Mr. Brace has previously indicated. And ultimately, in those decisions, the decisions are Mr. Phillips' decisions. They're not our decisions. Lawyers, good lawyers, provide options. We provide ranges of options and outcomes, and then we give them to people, and they make the choice.
I'm sorry, can you explain what happens next week?
Oh, next week will be a date to get a date for the parole eligibility and sentencing process, I guess is what you'd call it. And the reason we did it that way is because A, we have to assess the complexity of the situation to determine how much time we will require and how we will go about it, because there's a number of ways we could go about it in this case. Yeah. And, so that will be the date to get the date. And we need to know how much time we need and how far out to prepare. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.